Hello and welcome to today's flight. We're on the ground at Tacoma Narrows Airport in Gig Harbor, Washington, getting ready to take off and head southeastbound to Mount St. Helens. This is the second week I've been flying the MD-500E helicopter, and this is part of a series called First Flights. Today, again, as I said, is going to be to Mount St. Helens. So I'm going to put together a very simple flight plan. And we're going to fly from here. We're going to transition over McCord Air Force Base, which I would typically do in the real-world airplane when flying to Mount St. Helens. So I'm going to kind of simulate the air traffic control communications with Tacoma Tower, which this is a towered airport, as well as the Air Force Base. And we're going to continue on our way to Mount St. Helens. I'm going to keep this short. I'm not going to cover a lot of the flight, just the highlights as we make our way down to the mountain. And we're going to land inside the crater. That's something obviously we don't get to do in the real-world airplane, so I'm kind of looking forward to that. We'll try to give a 360-degree perspective. We'll rotate the helicopter around in there, hopefully find a suitable place to land. So I'm kind of excited about this flight. Appreciate you joining me, and without further ado, let's go ahead and hop in the cockpit and get the aircraft started. Okay, and here's our position, parked in front of Pavco Flight Center at Tacoma Narrows Airport. We're going to turn the master avionics switch off, and the master power switch is going to be on. We're going to turn on the fuel pump, and we're going to turn on the position and navigation lights. Fuel pump stays on for about 5 seconds, and then we're going to turn that off, and then we're going to hit the start and watch the torque come up between 12 and 15%. We're going to advance the throttle from idle, full idle, to the stop position. And there you can see it spinning up. Then we're going to watch the torque peak and then come back down, and when it settles, we'll advance the throttle to 100%. There's some of that beautifully rendered scenery here in the enhanced scenery package, which is Orbic's product. And there you can see the torque coming up and peaking. And we're going to watch that settle back down again. And right now I'm going to switch to the GTN 750, which is an option that I have loaded in the aircraft. Avionics master on. We'll let that fire up. And there the torque settled. So we're going to advance the throttle to 100%. So that should be showing about 103% RPM. That's all looking good. All right, before we take off here, I want to show you one of the features that I use in my simulation flying and also real world. It's great that I can use it in the simulator for training purposes. I'm going to bring up here something called 5K Player, and what I'm doing is I'm projecting my iPad image onto 5K, and that way I'm able to display it on the screen here as I fly along. We'll put this over here on the left-hand side where it's out of the way, and we're going to put together a simple flight plan here. So we're going to be departing Kilo Tango India Whiskey, and we're going to go direct Mount St. Helens. So we're going to find Mount St. Helens here. There's Mount Rainier, and Mount St. Helens is right there. So I'm going to do a long press on Mount St. Helens. I'm going to press on the latitude, longitude, and so that's going to be our simple flight plan for now. I'm going to add one more thing to it, and that is we're going to transition over McCord Air Force Base, which is going to be right here. So I'm going to grab my magenta course line, and I'm going to add McCord Air Force Base. So there we are, and I just tap the upper right button, and that allows me to orient the aircraft to the direction that it's facing, and also its position on the map. The program that I'm using to project our location on the iPad is this one right here. It's called Flight Events. So again, that's allowing my Foreflight to see the aircraft as if it is in real world at Tacoma Narrows Airport. Okay, let's get that guy out of the way. And so we're going to fly this course line right here, direct to McCord Air Force Base. We're going to simulate having gotten our clearance, and we're going to take off here and do a nice gentle taxi along the taxiway here. Nice and slow as we make our way parallel to the runway. There you can see the moving map moving. Such a fantastic flight planning tool for those who fly lots of sim and don't have Foreflight. It's something you really might consider. It's a good investment. There is a subscription fee involved, but I think it's well worth the money depending on the level of subscription you have. I have the higher one, which allows a lot of flexibility, but of course I fly it in real world, so I think it's worth, I want to say it's about $300 a year for the full subscription. Obviously less as you get the lower tier subscriptions. each one offering different features. All right, so we're making our way over to McCord Air Force Base. There you can see us on the moving map, and you can see the magenta course line. So we're flying along here, coming up on 500 feet and climbing. So right about here, Tacoma Tower would be handing me off to McCord Tower. Of course, I would have informed them when I'm on the ground that I'm going to transition through McCord, so McCord is going to expect me. So I'd be talking to McCord Tower right now, requesting transition southeastbound direct Mount Saint Helens. I would give them my current altitude out of 1,000, climbing 2,000, and they would typically give me a squawk code to enter into the transponder. Okay, so there we are. We're on the course, climbing at about 1,000 feet per minute. I'm going to get the nose down just a little bit in the helicopter, and as soon as we cross McCord Air Force Base, we're going to make our way south eastbound direct to Mount Saint Helens. And the goal is to fly over Spirit Lake, and I'll add that into my flight plan here in a minute. And then we're going to fly into the crater and land, which is something really cool, something you're not able to do in a fixed-wing airplane, of course. I have flown over Mount Saint Helens many times, maybe 20 to 30 times in a real-world airplane. Got some beautiful, beautiful footage down into there. And the one thing I've never been able to do, obviously, is land inside the crater. So we're going to land in there. We're going to do a 360-degree turn. Sort of give you a look around in there. So we're going to
Class Delta in 1.5 miles.
Okay, so that's Foreflight warning us that we're coming up to Class Delta airspace. Of course, that's McCord. We've already talked to them, got our squawk code, and so we can transition through there without any issues. That's another cool feature of Foreflight. It'll give you a warning when you're approaching any kind of airspace if you have it set to do that. There you can see the airspace highlighted in green. We're underneath Class Bravo for SeaTac Airport right now. We're well underneath the shelf, which is 5,000 to 7,000 feet right where we are. We're at 2,000 feet, so no issues there. We do have to be mindful, however, on climb out after McCord that we don't penetrate into the Bravo airspace without a specific clearance to do so. It's not necessary to get that clearance. We have plenty of time to climb up and go direct to Mount Saint Helens. There's McCord Air Force Base, that big brown patch you can see in front of us. Let's see what kind of AI aircraft they have parked down there. Typically at McCord, you're going to see C-17 aircraft parked on the flight line. I have, to date, never been denied a clearance through there. I think there's probably times when they have some flight operations going on where they might deny you clearance into their airspace, but I have not encountered that yet. All right, so we're in their Class Delta right now. You can see that blue hash mark line in the moving map. We're inside of it, and their airspace goes from the ground to 2,800 feet. You can see that little square box there with the 28 indicating the top of the airspace for McCord Air Force Base. All right, usually I fly right over the middle of the runway, and before I make my turnout to Mount Saint Helens, we'll do that right here. And once we cross over and make our turnout, shortly thereafter, typically McCord would have me squawk VFR and approve my frequency change. So right now I'm on with McCord Tower. Everything looks very, very accurate as we look down below the aircraft when compared to real world. Of course, I do have enhanced scenery for Tacoma Narrows Airport, and that typically expands outward. I don't know, some defined distance, and I'm not sure what that is, but pretty accurately rendered right here. There are some aircraft on the ground down there, not really sure what kind they're going to be, but if it's accurate, they're going to be cargo aircraft. Typically, they're going to be C-17s. Okay, so here we are right at 2,000 feet, coming up to McCord Air Force Base, and there you can see our moving map. I'm going to tap at the top here. You can see what's called the Attitude Heading Reference System, or AHRS view, which comes in really handy. Gives you a three-dimensional rendition of all of the terrain out in front of you. The terrain here, as you can see, is pretty flat. Anything you see that's in red is terrain that you would strike if you maintain your present altitude before reaching. By the time you reach that terrain, you would make a ground strike. Anything that's in yellow means that you're within 1,000 feet of that terrain. So that's constantly changing as you fly along, and it's particularly useful when flying in mountainous terrain. We're going to go ahead and turn that off, and I'll turn that back on as we get closer to Mount Saint Helens so you can see some of the terrain features rendered in 3 dimensions. All right, here we are over the runway. I'm going to bring it down just a little bit here. We're coming up on 2,500 feet. And as you can see, our turnout is coming up. Now that magenta course line is going to change to blue, and then the one in front of it is going to change into magenta. We'll go ahead and follow that course line. And I'm not going to record the entire flight to Mount St. Helens. As you can see in the lower left of the display there for Foreflight, it's 58 nautical miles or 36 minutes. We're currently doing 98 knots over ground. There's 2,500 feet, so we're going to make our slight turnout here. You should be able to see Mount St. Helens coming up here pretty quickly. It's just going to be a mountain with a flat top. All right, so we're going to begin to climb out, and as you can see, there's some Class Bravo airspace that we're inside right now. So I can't climb right now above 5,000 without penetrating into that airspace. So we'll make a gentle climb here of about 500 to 1,000 feet per minute. And the 500E aircraft is real, it's real peppy, and it can climb, it can basically take control away from you and start climbing way more than you want it to. So right now we're climbing at a nice steady 1,000 feet per minute. I'm going to level it off at about 4,500 as we're coming into the next, there's that warning that, or not warning, but it's telling us that we're leaving McCord Air Force Base's airspace. Maintain this course line and this rate of climb, and we're in good shape. The next, as you can see, 5,000 to 10,000, we're going to be coming into that here pretty quickly, so we can't climb above 5,000 feet or we will bust Bravo airspace. All right, and we're going to recenter. There we are, coming up on 3,500 feet. And we're on course. Not quite able to see Mount St. Helens out ahead of us here, but it should be coming up pretty quickly. Now, if you see some screen flicker or the orientation of what you're looking at changes rapidly, that's because I'm using a Track IR headset where I can turn my head and it'll follow where I look. And sometimes the sunlight, when it comes through the window, overwhelms the system and it gets confused and it starts to jump around. So Seattle Class Bravo, as you can see, is above in 3.4 nautical miles. If I maintain below 5,000 feet, I'll be okay. It's warning me and it's showing me where that Class Bravo airspace is. So I went ahead and deleted that warning. I'm still climbing here at a nice gentle 500 feet per minute. Way off in the distance there is Mount St. Helens. Hard to see right now. I know what to look for. It's pretty much there in the left side of the windscreen and dead ahead. All right, so we're going to make our way direct to Mount St. Helens. That airspace that's highlighting there is Gray Army Field, our Army Airfield, which is kind of connected to McCord. It's a joint air base and an Army base. All right, climbing at 1,000 feet per minute. We're at 4,100. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of speed here. So I'm going to dip the nose down, add some collective. All right, there's that warning about Class Bravo airspace ahead. And there's Mount St. Helens. It's coming into clearer view. All right, 4,500 feet. Now the next warning is 6,000 to 7,000, and it tells you where that is on the map in highlighted green. And that's coming up pretty quick here. So I'm going to level off right where I am and stay below the 5,000 to 7,000 shelf before we get into the 6,000 to 7,000 shelf. So we're leveled off right there. We have Mount St. Helens dead ahead. Now I can start adding some trim. I have some trims here that kind of relieve some of that pressure on the cyclic that I'm having to maintain. All right, I'm going to keep it below 5,000, so I'm trimming, giving it a little bit of nose down trim. Should be picking up some speed here. All right, now we're in the 6,000 to 7,000 foot Class Bravo, so we can continue our climb. Okay, picking it back up here at 41 nautical miles now from Mount St. Helens. Looks like 22 minutes. And one of the things I wanted to show you here is I'm going to go ahead and change or add something to my course. So I want to fly over Spirit Lake, so I'm just going to grab that course line, put it over Spirit Lake, and tap the lat long, and recenter the aircraft. And that's going to change my course line. I'm going to fly a little bit left here because I do want to fly kind of northeast of Spirit Lake, and then come into the crater from Spirit Lake. So I'm just going to turn a little bit here. Now the other thing I can do is bring up the flight plan and do a direct to. So I'm going to tap on that and do a direct to. So that's going to change my course line. It basically erases everything before before the airplane and places a new course line to my new destination, which is Spirit Lake. So I'm just going to kind of fly what I have going on here. We're coming up on 6,500 feet. Our cruise altitude is going to be 9,500. Now would be a good time to show you the AHRS, and that can be done in a full screen view as well. There you can see all the nice 3D rendering of the terrain in front of the aircraft. Of course, that's giving our heading, it's giving our course line, course deviation indicator there, showing that we're slightly left of course. Coming up on 7,000 feet. Now we're doing 86 knots over the ground. I'm going to nose down just a little bit, reduce my rate of climb, and pick up a little bit of ground speed. There you can see the ground speed coming up. So there you can see red, and that's indicating if I maintain my present altitude by the time I reach the terrain indicated in red, I would be striking ground. Not going to be an issue for Mount Saint Helens because we're going to be at 9,500 feet. And that is well above the highest point of the mountain itself. So this is a very helpful feature, the AHRS view, particularly when flying over mountainous terrain. You can see what's out in front of you and know what you need to do to avoid all of the terrain that's out there. So we're at a safe altitude right now for all the stuff that's immediately in front of us. There you can even see in front of us they have airports marked. That one looks like 39 Papa. Probably a private airfield, but if you had to land somewhere, that's a good quick reference for where the airports are. And coming up on 8,000 feet, doing 92 knots. 38 nautical miles, 25 minutes, and we'll pick it back up as we get near Spirit Lake. I'm going to get rid of the AHRS view, back to that view. You can also do a aerial map view, which kind of shows a satellite rendering of the terrain. Let's get rid of that. So there's kind of a satellite rendering of all the terrain below us. So we're going to go back to VFR section of view and get rid of that guy. So lots of really, really cool stuff. One of the things I really like about flight planning in Foreflight is when you go to your flight plan and click on profile. So right now it shows our airplane relative to all the terrain. But when you put in a flight plan, it will show you where any of the terrain you're going to strike from your point of departure to your point of arrival, so you can adjust your altitude, your planning altitude accordingly. So that's pretty cool. Going to go back to edit mode, get rid of that guy. And there, as you can see in the aeronautical sectional, all the elevations are indicated below. Okay, we're back with you, steady at 9,500 feet and coming up on Spirit Lake. You can see our course line there. The distance is to the next waypoint, which is Spirit Lake, is 6.6 nautical miles or 7 minutes. And there's the lake right in front of us. We're going to overfly that. I'm going to descend down, not quite to the lake, but lower so you can get a nice view. Now, in the 1980 eruption, the blast wave, which created winds in excess of 300 miles per hour, blew tens of thousands of trees down, and the blast wave occurred in waves over the various mountain tops, and so it would blow all the trees down as the blast wave came up, and then the blast wave would go over the crest, and then many of the trees on the opposite side of the crest would remain. But it's not going to be rendered in the simulator, but in real life, there are tens of thousands of trees that are floating inside Spirit Lake. So I'm just going to gently descend down here as I make our way. So I want to fly from the northeast portion of the lake toward the crater, and then we'll climb back up and land inside the crater. The goal here is going to be to land inside the inner dome, which is a newly formed dome. It's a natural phenomenon that occurs after each eruption. The dome rebuilds itself. The mountain actually lost about 1,400 feet in elevation in the eruption in a matter of seconds, and all that debris came off where you can see right there. It came toward the north, toward us, and all of that debris and melted snow, which turned into steam, went down the Toutle River and caused a great deal of flooding damage to our west. Spirit Lake used to be a resort, heavily attended by many hikers and people that would stay at the lodge. It is, since the 1980 eruption, has become a ghost town. There's really no inhabitants down there or any buildings of any kind. We're just going to kind of descend down here a little bit closer to the lake. Reduce our power setting as we do so. So the trees, if this were real world, you would see it almost looks like a landmass on the north end here, the northeast end, with tens of thousands of trees. It looks like sand, but it's trees from 1980. That's quite a phenomenon. All right, so we're at 7,500 feet, and I'm just going to fly along the lake here to give you a nice look as we make our way up to the crater. Looks like there's still snow in there. When I fly over the crater, in real world, sometimes you see steam coming up from the inner dome. Again, that newly forming dome in there. It's quite volatile, even though it's not in an eruption state. There's a lot of geothermal activity going on, lots of rock slides that are occurring, constant movement, constant things going on as the dome builds itself. What's cool about this flight is we'll be able to land inside the crater, not something you can do in a fixed-wing aircraft. So here's Spirit Lake. You can see why it was a very popular tourist spot. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and shut that moving map off just so you can get a better view out of the helicopter as we make our way up to the crater over the lake here. Quite picturesque. In the wintertime, I have track IR turned off, by the way, so my head movements aren't going to be replicated on the screen. That's because the sun's popping up through the window and it's confusing track IR. So to keep it from going haywire, I'm just going to keep the track IR turned off. Here we're at 7,000 feet, flying over the beautiful Spirit Lake. All right, so we're doing 77 knots. The dome, the inner dome, is pretty much where I set the lat long for our destination. Is 5.3 nautical miles now in front of the aircraft. And we're at 7,500 feet. Just going to add a little bit of power. There's a good look inside the dome. I'm going to get a better look here in a minute. Coming up to 8,500. I'll probably level off about right here. That's about the elevation inside the dome. So I'll bring that nose down a little bit. And I'm going to reduce power and reduce our airspeed a little bit as we get closer. Look for a suitable place to land. Probably not too many level areas in there, although real-world helicopters do go in there. They fly researchers in, and there are obviously places they have to be able to land to get their teams up inside the dome there as they do their geological studies. All right. 3 nautical miles now to the center of the crater. All right, we're looking for a good spot to land. To get it slowed down just a tad more here. Speed over ground right now is 94 knots. We're going to get that slowed down quite a bit and get it into a hover, hopefully over that inner dome there. Look for a relatively flat spot to put it down. All right, now we're down to 61 knots over ground. I'm going to reduce a little bit of power here. Get it slowed down a little bit more. My goal here is to land on the inner dome somewhere where it's reasonably flat. But before I do that, I think I want to do a 360, sort of get a good look all the way
500.
Around the, and that's Foreflight warning us that we're 500 feet AGL. It's a nice little feature. Yeah, once we get over that dome, let's go ahead and get it into a hover, and then we'll do a 360. and get a nice look inside the crater. Wow, that's amazing. Just the quality of graphics in Microsoft Flight Simulator is very, very impressive. Let's take a look now at the eastern wall. That even the coloration in the rock is quite realistic. It does have lots of red tones in it. All right, I'm not sure where best to put this down. I'm looking at a patch of snow down there on the inner dome. That would be pretty cool, be able to put it down on there. Hopefully it's reasonably flat. I don't want to get on a slope that's snowy and the helicopter slides downhill. That would not be a good outcome. I'm thinking this patch right down here in front of the helicopter, maybe that guy right there, might be suitable. Come forward nice and slow. That's the radio altimeter, that tone you just heard there. I'll put it down right here. Snow probably would not be a good place to land in real world. You don't know what's under it, number one, and the skids could sink into it. So this is definitely an unstable environment in here. But since it's a simulator, we can give it a try. I come laterally to the right here, a little bit of right cyclic. Down nice and slow. I don't want to sink those skids into the snow there. All right, there's a little bit of dust kicking up, a little bit of snow kicking up. And we're on the ground. Let's have a look around. Looks like a pretty good landing spot. That is absolutely amazing to me. Being able to land inside the crater like that is super cool stuff. Well, that does it. Thanks for joining me on my flight from Tacoma Narrows Airport over McChord Air Force Base, direct Mount Saint Helens. We got a great look inside the crater. It's not something you get to do in a fixed-wing airplane. One of the treats of flying a helicopter as I still try to improve my skills. Thanks for joining me on today's flight, and we'll see you again next time.